Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Heartland Mamas. I'm Murray Briel.
And I'm Heidi Henry, coming to you from our two socially distant studios at the edge of the Great Red Divide. You can find all of our previous works at Heartland Mamas, MAMAS.com, on Twitter. We usually have links. You can find us on Facebook, on social media, every podcast platform, proudly part of the Demcast USA network, and if you want to see our goofy faces, on YouTube, bringing you the news of progressivism, the Democratic Party, and common sense across the Great Red Divide into your home every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m. So Murray, today, last week I was watching the impetus for this is I was watching Mark Zuckerberg testify before Congress last week, and again wanted to, what the hell is up with his hair? I, it's like, what, Julius Caesar? Who the hell are you? Or maybe he just has bad hair. He just looks like he's got a Brillo pad on his head, with his little short bangs. So I'm sure his mom thinks he's cute. But
Yeah,
watching him
I
talk, I'm
don't
like,
think being cute really matters.
no, he's just got
He's
a lot of
super
money.
rich.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I'm thinking, somebody loves you, but all you do is take a lot of money for a lot of misdirection. And I thought, how does he get away with that? And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, it's Section 230. So tell everybody what Section 230 is all about, because you and I get off on this fairness doctrine thing all the time, and we riff on
right.
it. But there's a little
For
part.
anyone who has heard our past episodes, or if you haven't, I strongly recommend that you check out the Fairness Doctrine episodes. And we've done two of them. And many of our regular shows are interwoven with the faults in the loss of the Fairness
Right.
Doctrine. So, Section 230 came about as the internet was beginning to burgeon. And we're talking 30 years ago, right? Before we had social media, just as it was beginning, as service providers like AOL were sending emails.
Yep.
And they realized there needed to be some sort of law to govern it. And it's so interesting that so much of what we're facing now comes down to just 26 words. And I'll let Heidi read those to you. But the gist of it is that internet service providers are not content creators. And that all comes from the Communication Act of 1934. So, and they built this based off of a 1950 Supreme Court challenge where a bookseller had a book, one of the authors that he was selling in his store, because back then women didn't own stores. I can pretty safely assume it was a guy owner. He had profanity in it and obscenities. And one of the community members sued the bookseller for selling that book. And the Supreme Court ruled that the bookseller can't be responsible for the content of what is in all of their books. And thus, because the internet didn't fall into radio or TV, they said, hey, let's base it off of this. They're providing information, not creating information. So it boils down to internet service providers are not content creators. Social media, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg creates some content, but that's his personal content, not as a company. And therefore, it is a vehicle for individuals to share information.
Right.
And that's how it has been established. And that's how social media companies have gotten away with a lot. They've gotten away with anonymity. They get away with allowing things, companies like Cambridge Analytics, to roust their data for nefarious purposes. Right. And it's really easy to go, hey, these guys are bad guys. But in actuality, I don't think that we can really jump to the conclusion that Section 230 is bad.
Right. Well, yes and no. I mean, Section 230 is not very built out. And I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. And when it was written in 1989, we had no idea what the internet was going to become, right? We had no idea. In 1989, I had no email. I wasn't on the internet. I think I wasn't on until after my daughter was born. So that would have been 94, and it was after that point. So I'm not really sure. It was just kind of, I'm busy all the time, so I didn't need another energy vampire in my life. And that's what I looked at it as. Now it's like, how could I get by without it? I'd have to go back to the library all the time, which I spend a lot of time in.
And the internet's been amazing. The
Yeah,
advancements that have been able to be
right,
created, crowdsourcing. The internet is an amazing, amazing place. And part of that amazingness is that it is monitored to a large extent. It
right.
is the ability for individuals to become famous. Look at Justin Bieber. He became famous from posting videos on YouTube, writing
Yes.
songs.
And
It's a place
influencers.
for the vaccine, the DNA sequencing of the virus had
Right,
already been crowdsourced out with looking for a vaccine. So, there's countless ways that it has improved our lives immensely.
right.
But
I agree. But so here is the section 230. It provides immunity for websites and publishers from third party content. So if I say something on Facebook that's a complete lie, Facebook's not held accountable for that at all. So it says no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. And let me boil this down for you. When this was first published, this there was a lot of impetus, but one of the things that came out was there was a car sold on Craigslist or a bulletin board, an internet bulletin board, and the car was junk. And the person who bought the car couldn't find the person they bought it from, so they went after the owner of the bulletin board and wanted to sue them for the car being a piece of junk. And they're like, wait a minute, I had nothing to do with that. I didn't post the car, I didn't tell you anything about it. I just provided the service for you to find a car and somebody to sell a car. And I'm sorry, it sucks to be you that it didn't work out. Well, I understand that. But at some point, as the computer and social media and all of this, because social media wasn't even like a blip on the screen in 89, as things evolve, we need to be able to evolve our rules and regulations, our licensing, our ability to not regulate, I hate that word, but, to have the content be authentic and be real and have some accountability. And I agree, Facebook and Twitter and all of those things should not be held accountable for what we write and what we say. But there has to be some culpability, Murray. I mean, you know that I went through just 6 weeks ago, some very boisterous attacks and that were turning personal and physical about things that I had posted on the internet by a local chapter of the QAnon. Come at me, bro. So I will take you to court, which is exactly what I did. But because of Section 230 and the internet protections, there was really nothing that the judges could do about it unless they physically laid hands on me, and then it becomes something else. So,
now, in those cases,
yeah,
I know that there are some instances where terrorism and domestic terrorism
right.
and like Facebook is still under questioning, as we just saw last week, for why
Mm-hmm.
um, listed hate watch groups by the federal government as terrorist organizations are still allowed to keep their social media profiles. So
Exactly.
I totally agree that there are things that especially considering the fact that that's federally mandated and this law only falls to federal and doesn't fall state by state.
Right.
So I agree with you, but I'm also concerned that every time we step, we do a slippery slope.
I
So
know.
you're right. There was no recourse for you except to go to court. And the judge said, well, it's free speech. They can pretty much do whatever they want to do. Sorry.
Unless they.
And I don't think that Facebook should be responsible for monitoring that
Right.
type of content. And it would be too hard because you even, different groups have different admins. It doesn't necessarily go up to Facebook,
Right.
it goes to the group. And perhaps there needs to be some sort of restructure as far as reporting goes.
Well,
But I'm
and even then, what happened with me was a simple post about how people can report non-compliant businesses for to the state of Illinois for the mask mandate, and this was a situation of public health. And for some reason, because they couldn't reach the person who actually posted it, because I was also a contributor to that initial post, they could easily find me because I'm a public figure. And that's what brought them to my door. I understand that there is their ability to have free speech and to cyberbully at will. But what we're talking about with 230 is the fact that um, Zuckerberg's not responsible for the fact that his company accepted payment in rubles in 2016 for ads that steered our election for president.
now I think that that's a slightly different um, avenue. I'm not sure
He's not a
that that
content
falls
provider.
under Section
He
230, and the only reason is because that falls under advertising. It
well,
wasn't.
that's part of it.
Um, okay, keep going.
But the content that they advertised. Okay, so if they said that Hillary Clinton was trafficking children and that's how we got Pizzagate, right? The fact that they were able to run those ads and pay for those ads in rubles did not stop, and because they were blatant lies, did not stop other people from picking up that story, typing it out in their own way, and rebroadcasting it and resharing it and sharing it and sharing
And
it.
Heidi, you're 100% right, because when we talk, this kind of brings us into how can we expect Zuckerberg, Dorsey, social media to adhere to fair and regulate content when companies, media organizations like Fox News, Sinclair, produce that type of content? So that's the line you're looking at, right? So Zuckerberg may have taken money from, or not Zuckerberg. We need to make sure that Facebook took advertisements from an organization, and then what they did with it, combined with Cambridge Analytica going through all their data, was push it to folks who had a predilection for that information,
Right.
which is extremely dangerous, 100%. But how is that any different from Fox News propagating false information on Sean Hannity that COVID is a hoax, that there is no need to wear masks? That how can we hold Facebook accountable? They didn't create the ads. They didn't create the content. Now, he might have done it behind the scenes if he's a nefarious guy that really likes Donald Trump, which I think he is, but not outwardly. Where Fox designs, the organization itself approves of the misinformation that is being disseminated under the guise of news. And that brings me to another point that I've been thinking is, okay, so the mainstream media, which we call print, radio, and TV, they have a far larger reach for a consistent message than social media does, right? Because everybody tunes into the radio at some point. They can repeat a similar message and reach many more people. But I believe one of the real fears, which is exactly what you brought up, is that it's not as influential as social media. Advertisers have stopped advertising in main media. Newspapers are closing all over the place because social media is more effective. And the reason social media is effective is because, just like you said, Heidi, it's an individual sharing a story. It's me sharing something, or me looking on Facebook and seeing my mailman, George, post an article about how COVID's no worse than the flu. And rather than listening to all the conflicting opinions out there, right? Listening to right side, left side, all the different newscasters, I trust George. He's my mailman. So I'm going to share that information. And you're right. So it's almost arguable that they have a higher level of social responsibility. But I can't see that if you have,
on
Blatant lies being told on news
I know.
stations.
Well, and that goes back to the fairness doctrine. We couldn't have Fox News if Reagan hadn't gotten rid of the fairness doctrine. I had to
Oh,
pay
but
us.
they've been working on it since, remember, Nixon
Well,
started
right.
eroding the
Nixon
fairness
started it.
doctrine the best.
Right. Nixon started it, but Reagan finished it. And the other day, yesterday, I had to drive by the birthplace of Ronald Reagan. It was
I'm
all I could
sorry.
do to keep my fingers to myself.
I know. He is one of the most horrible presidents of the
Ever.
past. But yeah, you're right. His erosion, his continued erosion, and the Murdoch's influence and Bill Barr's influence, surprisingly enough, that jackass was there back in those days,
Yep.
are all a part of why we're here today. In fact, the Department of
Exactly.
Justice, just in 2020, brought charges of a monopoly of social media. They're investigating a monopoly of social media, calling them the giant conglomerate that needs to be broken up, right? And they're claiming that it's because, they've smothered new innovation with their magnitude of use, right? We all know that that's just sort of another way to attack social media as Donald Trump's henchmen
Right.
and pull on it, because it's funny that this got instigated yet again after May, when Twitter for the first time flagged a post that Donald Trump made, claiming it was about mail-in ballots
Right.
and fraud, and they flagged the post as questionably factual and added links to reputable sources. And it was funny because the next day, Donald Trump issued executive order, or whatever the hell it was, like 9,000,
Yeah.
saying that Section 230 is repealed for social media companies, is going away. And that's why you guys may have heard of Section 230. And that's why it was brought to the forefront. And so funny, the DOJ, actually, I have it right here, surprisingly enough. There are 4 recommendations to modify Section 230, include incentivizing platforms to deal with illicit content, including calling out bad Samaritans that solicit illegal activity and remove their immunity, carving out exemptions in the areas of child abuse, terrorism, cyber stalking. However, when the DOJ won't declare something a terrorist organization, why should Mark Zuckerberg, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
come on. So, also removing protections from civil lawsuits brought by the federal government. So, Section 230 prevents the government from suing Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg.
Right.
And now keep in mind, Trump really is angry at social media for questioning the validity of his information.
Exactly.
Does that not seem coincidental at all?
Murray, in pre-show, you quoted somebody who's a big supporter of Donald Trump. Who was that? Who was that very special congressman? Do you have that here?
Graham?
No, not.
Is it Lindsay?
Not Lindsay.
Bitch.
I'm sorry. Sorry, my phone.
We talk about a lot of things.
Yeah, we do.
In pre-show to kind of narrow down the focus of our shows, because we think we could talk for probably 7 hours.
We could.
But y'all
Can't
probably only want to hear us for about 30 minutes.
Well, but
so
Murray, just want to say that on the internet, it gives people like your mailman George, like one of my neighbors, the authority. They become the authority on an issue, and it's false authority because they have not researched the issue. It's just somebody blathering about something they feel about, right?
And that's implicit authority. And they're not even conscious of using false authority, but we're all falling victim to that rhetorical argument.
Right.
Because, like I said, my mailman George hasn't caught COVID yet, and he's been delivering the mail, so he knows what's real and what's
fake.
not.
Right. So, and we go through this, every time I read a post from our governor, from the Governor Pritzker, about tier 3 mitigations, which is what Illinois is in, which is no worse than what they have in North Dakota right now, or South Dakota right now. And people will laugh and joke and want to argue with them as if they're the authority on what COVID-19 is. Now, I'm going to tell you that Murray and I could probably throw down with, not with Dr. Fauci, but with a lot of people about the facts and the truth of COVID-19, only because we've been talking about it since December, long before the nation even knew about it. And I'm thinking that no matter what, the story came out today that it had been in the United States even earlier than we thought. I don't care if COVID-19 had come in with a warning bell and siren and flashing lights. Donald Trump still would have not done a damn thing about it, because that's just him. It's not about him. So why could it be important? It's not important. And
Well, it damaged him. It would make it harder for him. If people worried, then they wouldn't spend money, and then the stock market would go down and he'd lose re-election because he knew he was an abysmal failure and everything, other than the false economy argument that we all buy into.
You know what helped people spend money when things were really tough, Murray? Giving them $1,200 per person. You know what else made them spend money? Giving them $600 extra in their unemployment. Our economy took a big uptick for that short period of time and then went right back down because people don't have any money. That's why they're not spending any money, Donald Trump. That is the K-shaped economy. That means that some people are going up and some people are going down, and the ones that are going down are going way, 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 way down. And
well, it's the complete obliteration of the middle class. We finally reached that point.
Thank you,
It
Ronald
will
Reagan.
be the haves and have-nots.
Yes.
And Heidi, you mentioned something when you were talking about your false authority.
Yeah.
I believe that if mainstream media were held accountable to the original fairness doctrine, that social media would not have the influence that it does over people. Yes, I might still read my mailman George's article that he posted in his opinion, but I would have seen on Fox News the pros and cons of not wearing masks, both things that were of public interest. So I wouldn't have been inundated for the social media wouldn't need to monitor Donald Trump's falsehoods, because main media news outlets would be functioning as news outlets as opposed to opinion pieces, and be giving actual information to people that they could make those decisions.
Murray, that can never happen unless we reinstate the fairness doctrine. Updated.
I know, girl.
Updated for the modern age. I don't know how we can exist as a society, because in many other countries, in many other countries, people like entities like Newsmax and Fox News are banned because they are known to be false and detrimental to the well-being of the public and the people. And we just roll along and go, free speech. You can say whatever you want. Yell fire in the theater, because nobody's going to stop you anymore. Don't wear a mask. I had to go shop.
If we had... Go ahead.
I had to go. I had to stop.
Oh, no, go, girl.
I had to stop at a Casey's way out in Sterling, Rock Falls area. I was in Rock Falls. I go in. I have to go to the bathroom. I picked up a horse that was about 3 hours away. And I'm on my way home. I had to stop to use the bathroom and let my dog out. I go in there, and of course there's mask holes in there. I'm like, damn it. Why do you have to wreck it for the rest of us? Why do you have to put the rest of us in danger this close to Christmas, this close to the end of everybody's life, just to prove that, it's my right to walk around without a mask? No, it isn't. Sorry.
And Heidi, the mask hole thing, I truly believe that if there had been some iteration of the fairness doctrine, that there may have been scientific challenges to some of the information that was coming out during the COVID, as we learn, but that it would be evenly presented. And again, I believe that a large chunk of mask holes, the cult of Trump,
Yes.
would buy into it. I mean, we go all the way back to the 1918, right? And we had plenty of mask holes back then that
Right.
wouldn't wear masks and
During the
killed off
Spanish
tons of
flu.
people.
Yep.
But we would have a lot less than we do now because there would be a reliable source of information. In fact, we need to redefine what the hell information actually is.
Right.
There is no such thing as fact anymore. It doesn't exist. Fact is who has control of the microphone. They make
It's
up
true.
who
It's true.
who has power. They define our reality, and we allow them to do it.
Yeah, Murray, that's exactly right, because you and I know that out near me, where your dad is at the veterans home, they've had a terrible, terrible outbreak of COVID. Not the worst in the state, but one of the worst in the states and one of the worst in any nursing homes. And people have died and people are sick and staff is sick. And we have a state senator, the one I ran against, that has been advocating for ripping open the state and letting everybody walk around without masks, no mitigations whatsoever. And she's the one leading the charge to investigate how this happened. And this is the kind of bullshit that things like 230, like the fairness doctrine, like being a Trumpican, has caused for the detriment of this country. This goes
And
back
you
to that
realize that all of 230 and all of the media protections is about court cases and suing.
Right.
That's the protections there. So wouldn't it be great if we could sue Senator Resin for falsely perpetrating for perpetrating false information that has caused harm? I personally, with my dad there, you know what? I'd be kind of happy to take and slap a lawsuit on every single representative in the state of Illinois and senator who failed to acknowledge the significance and seriousness of this. Because of that, a lot of folks don't listen. Because of that, they don't think it's real. And quite honestly, the protection is there, so I can't sue them. Even though they're making false statements, even though they put my dad's life in danger, I can't sue them. I think I should.
Sue Resin and her party with Donald Trump marching
should all be held liable for countless deaths.
They're marching lockstep for the mass execution of people via virus. And that's exactly what this has come down to. They are exterminating people of color. They are exterminating the elderly. They are exterminating people with disabilities. They are exterminating people with pre-existing conditions. And then there's some collateral damage as well. People who are young and healthy and had no pre-existing conditions. But
that's just...
They don't care.
It's
not
a little.
It is their base, but it's not the people they care about, I'm
and Heidi,
stunned.
When we talk about the exploitation of false information,
yes.
I want to bring up a point here,
Wait a minute,
real
Murray,
quick, about today.
Yeah, if you don't think the Republicans are exploiting this, so go ahead.
And that's just it. They're the ones that should be held accountable. Yeah. The content creators should be held accountable. George the mailman shouldn't be held accountable because he shared an article about how the virus is totally harmless. Yeah. But the person who wrote the article about the virus being totally harmless should be held accountable.
Yeah.
Someone needs to be held accountable.
Right.
And the way that facts and information become so incredibly distorted. Dr. Fauci, big, everybody loves him. He's an honest guy. We all trust him. He made this statement 2 days ago that, you know what? You should reopen schools. Statistically, schools should be able to be reopened, and restaurants should be shut down.
Right.
The spread in a classroom school setting is like 3 times less, still incredibly high, mind you.
Right.
But 3 times less than it is in a bar or restaurant with indoor dining.
Yes.
3 times less.
Right.
Now, all of the right-wing nutters are jumping on this and spreading false information. Mainstream media is putting out that Dr. Fauci says schools should be open. Kids should be in school. If you close the damn bars, is what it said,
But
which ruins a
Marie,
lot of the content there.
Marie, here in Illinois, we have tried. We're in Tier 3 mitigation, which means the bars and restaurants for indoor dining and indoor drinking should be closed. And yet you and I
Yep.
both know that they are open from your end of the state to my end of the state to north to south to east to west because people just, you can't do that to me. My God, if you just do it for a month, we get past this. But we all have to get on board and do the right things and quit twisting words to fit your narrative. Don't take Fauci's
And
words
not being
twist
held,
them.
they should be held to that.
Yes.
They should be held accountable for that.
Yeah.
And there should be some sort of, I mean, if nothing else, this pandemic and Donald Trump has glaringly exposed so many faults that we have
Oh my gosh. Marie,
in our governance.
I'm going to give you one local governance issue. We have a little, in Marseilles, a little town forum where people get on and talk, post stuff. And I know who it was, posted an article about a bar being fined and shut down and somebody being arrested. And it made it look like this happened in Illinois. And it didn't. It happened in Michigan because Michigan is doing its best to fix things, right? And they made it sound like, oh, JB, our governor, is out there arresting people for being open, which was a total lie. But it was to fit into that narrative, that Illinois Republican narrative, because that is the person who posted it, that our governor's a horrible person. And I posted on there, this article is from Michigan. And you know what they did? Blocked me.
Caveat emptor, buyer beware. I mean, that's something that's a separate issue that we should talk about is critical thinking. But I do sincerely believe that if every media outlet had to give both sides of an argument, that there would be far less of this manipulation on social media.
I agree.
I'm going to stick with that. So Biden, Mr. President, if you're listening, Ms. Vice President, if you're listening, please let's revisit the fairness doctrine.
Please.
I know that a lot of stuff has got to get fixed, but if we don't fix the media and next to social media, we're going to be in the same situation again
over and over again
the next time we have a crisis.
There is no way out of this unless we fix the fairness doctrine. We will be divided as a country and as a society. I will go as far as to say democracy will fall without the fairness doctrine.
I think you're right, Heidi, which is so sad.
It is sad.
So thank you guys for tuning in. We hope we've given you some information on Section 230, why it's important. Oh, Lord, we could talk about this for hours. But we hope you enjoyed our show. We will be on again Thursday at 3 o'clock. Join us every Tuesday and Thursday. And thanks so much. You can find all of our previous episodes at Heartland Mamas.
MAMAS.com on all podcast platforms, YouTube here at 3 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Demcast USA, and anywhere you get your podcasts. So thank you so much for tuning in. I know I got a few rants off my chest. I want to tell you about who benefits from losing the fairness doctrine in one of our upcoming episodes because
I'm down.
And let me tell you, it's nobody watching this. It's nobody watching this that benefits financially. So just to let you know. Okay, I'm going to let you go. See you later, everybody.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.